How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Riley's Redzone, and in today's video, we're talking Week 18, the last week of the NFL regular season. But I'm very excited for today's video because not only am I going to be giving my picks, but I invited every single guest picker from this season back. So you're going to see a lot of names on this screen, and I'm very excited to see how the standings will shake up at the end. Let's start with quick talking about my performance last week before we discuss this guest picker situation because the standings are very tight. So last week I went 13-3, bringing my record to 161-95 on the year. I'm 27 of 57 on underdog picks. And last week our guest picker was Alex, who said, hold up, wait a minute, let me get in this standings here towards the top. He put up a 9-7 performance, pretty solid. But looking at these standings, we have a lot of ties, which is why, just like last year, I needed to bring people back for this week. We have a couple people at the top at 10-4. We have a couple 10-6s. We have Alex with 9-7, and a lot of other people here who have a chance to get to that top spot after this week. So I had to bring everybody back. I invited everyone to have the chance to put their picks in for this week. So not only will I be discussing who I think will win the game, but we're going to have the thoughts, the maybe public opinion of all of these games. So I do quickly want to mention as well, Week 18 can be really, really tough to predict because there's a lot of teams who some have stated that there may be benching starters, some haven't. And situations can even change during the weekend. Like if one team clinches a spot and the other now is locked into a specific playoff seed, they might not play their starters anymore. But we're all trying our best with the information we know right now. We're making these picks as they are. So games can be tricky in Week 18, but that's what makes it fun. And so let's start talking about this week's slate, starting with the Ravens and the Steelers. On Saturday, Steelers looking to make it into the playoffs. The Ravens have the 1 seed clinched, therefore they are benching Lamar Jackson and likely other starters, so that needs to be taken into consideration. With Lamar in there, I think they're the best team in football right now, but even with them out, Tyler Huntley has played before. They have a solid chance at putting up a good performance. Meanwhile, the Steelers are going to be wanting to do everything they can to make it into the playoffs. Their strong defense, they're going with Mason Rudolph again on offense at quarterback, as their offense has been a little bit successful the past few weeks with him at the helm. And so a lot to be considered here, potentially benching starters and all that. So I'm going to go with the Steelers, as I believe they're going to want to make their way into the playoffs. And looking at our panel of guest pickers, it's a split game. You know, barely currently at the moment, the edge goes to the Steelers, but just barely. We have really split opinions on this game, even with the news of the starters. So this game could go either way. The panel is split. Colts and Texans both looking at a shot at this division in a playoff game. There's a lot at stake in this matchup. Both teams looking to potentially overtake Jacksonville this weekend and say, let's get in there at the 4 seed. But either way, both potentially also could be in wild card position. So both have a lot to play for. And surprisingly, as I'll discuss here, the panel is easily leaning one direction. The Colts have just been winning games all season. I've talked about it time and time again. I don't think their roster looks incredibly strong, but they are winning the games consistently, and that's what has them in this position that they are in today, including Gardner Minshew, the backup quarterback this season. He's been balling enough to get them wins. Meanwhile, CJ Stroud, when he came back in the lineup last week, it's a different Houston Texans team. They can absolutely light up the scoreboard, and DeMeco Ryans has that defense rolling. And so I'm going to go with the Houston Texans with Stroud healthy. I think that's a game changer. Fun fact I saw today, it is like their first game outside of a noon kickoff this season. That is unbelievable. So good for them to finally maybe get some spotlight here. We'll see how they perform in that. But right now, it is heavily in the Texans' direction for our guest picker panel. And only Braden and Charlie have picked the Colts. But that could easily shake up the standings right there. Keep an eye out on that one. Another AFC South divisional game here. The Jaguars, who it seemed like have been hot and cold this season, have been on the kind of colder direction as of late. Even against the Panthers last week, I didn't think they put up a star performance considering the level of the Panthers are playing at right now. But Trevor Lawrence potentially back in there. It's been CJ Beathard, and if so, he's been all right as well. The Titans have just as well. Normally they keep games close, but on a little bit of a sputter right now. But Will Levis, the rookie quarterback, always can keep it close. This one's tough. I think at home certainly gives the Titans a chance, but just going off of my formula on how I'm going to select games, I'm going to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Depending on what their quarterback situation is, either way, I'm going to go with the Jaguars, and so is most of the panel, but we have a couple people who are going with the underdog here, Alex and Charlie again, so keep an eye out on that right there. The standings could shift a little bit with those upset picks. Minnesota and Detroit. The Vikings coming off a loss against Green Bay in which they were atrocious both offensively and defensively. They are currently playing Wheel of Fortune with their quarterback position. They are changing their mind every 2 minutes, and it looks like Nick Mullins is the decision. I agreed with him going with Jaren Hall last week, but it was clear after that first half that he is not quite ready to be the starter as at the moment. And so Nick Mullins, although he did throw 4 interceptions, and you just can't have a backup do that a couple weeks ago, he has moved the ball the most for that team, so I can understand the decision to go with him. Meanwhile, the Lions come off an absolute heartbreaker of a game in which they had a shot until the end, until they had that penalty called on them. And so they really are in position to potentially make a dangerous playoff run, but this is maybe a bold take. I think that last week's game, they're trying to rally around it and everything, but I think potentially that is going to make them over-emotional and struggle a little bit this week. So this is one of those games that my formula says to pick the Lions, and everything says to pick the Lions, but this is exactly the type of game the Vikings win when they shouldn't, and I think this could be exactly the type of game the Lions lose when they shouldn't. So I'm going to go with the Vikings, and I'm with the minority here with Alex, Carson, and Cody, who are going with the Vikings. Meanwhile, the rest of the panel goes with the Lions. So that's another one potentially shaking things up. And the Falcons and the Saints. Falcons here, I think, have just been on a struggle. They just can't quite choose what to use offensively, and they've got Heineke now at quarterback, potentially, I think, dealing with an injury, and it could even be Ritter. But either way, it hasn't changed much. They've been just so hot and cold this season. Meanwhile, the Saints are moving. I mean, it's not been the strongest overall performance this season for them. They've been, I think, also really hot and cold in my opinion, but they can put points on the board when they need to, and at home, looking to potentially get in there into the playoffs. Either, they could potentially win the division, or as a wild card, I'm going to go with the Saints, and so does everybody except Charlie again gets a nice little upset pick here. So if that goes that direction, he's the only one picking up a win there, keeping us from being on Old Takes Exposed. Thank you for that if the Falcons were to win. And so let's talk about the Jets versus the Patriots. The Jets defense has been solid all season, and at some point it seemed like the Jets offense couldn't do anything, but they are moving a little bit at times with Trevor Siemian. It's been a little up and down all over for them depending on who they play. So in the Patriots as well, they've pulled off a couple wins over the last few weeks, the last month or so, that were kind of surprising. I think specifically that Broncos game really shocked me a little bit, and they kept it close with Buffalo last week. So they can sneak in there a little bit every once in a while. And so I have almost never picked the Patriots this season, but at home is going to make the difference for me. So I'm going to go with the New England Patriots, which is the minority again. We only have Braden, Cody, and Nick picking the Patriots from the guest panel, and surprisingly, the majority of the guest pickers are going with the underdog in the Jets. A majority underdog pick there from the panel. Very interesting to see that. Tampa Bay versus Carolina. Tampa Bay just needs to win, and they have it in the bag. They're going to the playoffs. But Baker Mayfield is projected to play, but uncertain if he is going to. That could potentially play a part in this week's game. It seems like, though, Coach Bowles said he will be good to go. So I'm going to consider him playing. Now, I want to remind everyone, the Bucs have been playing really well recently, but they struggled against the Panthers the first time this season. That was the first week with the interim head coach, and man, that really gave the Bucs a scare. Panthers almost pulled off that upset, and now they're at home. Potentially opportunity to make some noise here, but I think that Tampa is going to seal the deal, make the playoffs with a win here. But Alex is going to go with the Panthers in an upset here 2 weeks in a row. He's going with them in an upset, so once again keeping us from old takes exposed if the Panthers were to win that one. So that's another one. He's got a couple games here. If they go right, you're looking at him making a jump in the standings here. And let's talk about one of the more split games of the week, the Browns and the Bengals. The Browns are looking like one of the best teams in football with Joe Flacco at quarterback, but they've decided to rest him for this week going into the playoffs. They are locked into that 5 seed, and so you're going to see a little bit of an understaffed Browns team, but they still have a very solid defense, and their depth overall is very strong. With them switching quarterbacks, Jeff Driscoll has made it work in this league, but they would drop a tier in the rankings for me, which is why it's enough for me to go with the home team, even if they're ranked a little lower here. The Bengals have maybe been inconsistent over the last few weeks, but I think Jake Browning can get it done here. I'm going to go with the Bengals at home with the Browns kind of resting their starters. I'm going to go that direction. The panel is very, very split. The Browns are underdogs in this matchup, but this panel has a group of opinions here. It's split. It's very, very split. We've got 4-5 at the moment. And so currently in favor of the Bengals, but that could go either way. Then we have the Bears and the Packers. And as Aaron Rodgers mentioned on Pat McAfee at some point, at some point the Bears have to win if they want to call it a rivalry, and the Packers have dominated this series as of late. But the Bears are looking very, very solid over these last few weeks. Justin Fields is trying to say, not so fast, my friend, on the Bears picking a quarterback with the number 1 pick, which has been sealed. They will have the number 1 pick, and so as my channel shifts towards draft direction, that'll be something we talk about. But Justin Fields is playing out of his mind right now. The Packers are also playing like one of the best teams in football over the last month or so. Last week, playing against the Vikings certainly helped, and playing against a rookie quarterback, their defense actually looked all right, even though they've struggled most of this month. Them getting Jair Alexander back for this week as well, they're looking just as a win. Could potentially set them into the playoffs here. I think they can get it done at home. Justin Fields is going to do all he can to say not so fast, but I'm going to go with the Packers, and so does a large majority of the panel. But Matthew, once again, keeping us from potentially being on Old Takes Exposed, as he is the lone picker choosing the Bears this week, and they have been playing really, really well. So keep an eye out on that game. That could go either way. We do have, at the moment, and I guess it's only going to be that way unless somebody last second switches their pick, there's only one sweep this week on the picks, and so this could get us on the internet if this goes wrong. But I'm going to talk about here the Cowboys and the Commanders. The Cowboys, of course, barely squeak by with a win last week, about as close as you can get, but they get the win, even if it was a little controversial at the end. I think they are playing like one of the best teams in football. I currently have them number 3 in my power rankings, and so I believe that they will take care of business. The Commanders, not fully sure what they're doing with the quarterback. They were going to go with Brissett, but he was injured, so they have Howell. Either way, I'm going to go with the Cowboys, but this is sneaky as always. So is everybody. You see a lot of stars on the screen, but keep an eye out if it were to go the other way, of course. But for now, we're all going with the Cowboys in that matchup as the lone game that was a sweep in the selections this week. A very, very split game in the picks is Broncos versus Raiders. Broncos make the quarterback switch to Jarrett Stidham last week. Meanwhile, the Raiders, over the last month or two, have shown some bright spots with the rookie quarterback Aiden O'Connell. Jarrett Stidham potentially looking for some revenge, as he did the same thing for the Raiders last season as he's doing with the Broncos this season. I believe, though, that this will be a close one, but I'm going to take the home team in the Las Vegas Raiders. I think Antonio Pierce certainly deserves a long look, if not a guarantee, of him potentially being the coach next season. They just have shown a lot more fight and persistence when they are playing with him as their head coach. So I'm going to go with the Raiders, which is slightly in the majority of our guest pickers, but a lot of them going with the Broncos. This one is pretty split, as mentioned. What's not split is the Eagles and the Giants. There is currently, though, a lot of talks of the locker room being lost with the Philadelphia Eagles, and that certainly brings up concern to me, but I think this week potentially is an opportunity playing a little bit of a weaker Giants team for them to potentially bounce everything back there. But I'll tell you, this could be real bad if the Eagles don't get a win this week and go into the playoffs. I'm looking at them maybe being a potential first game out type of team. They just need to get back on track here. But the Giants have played some games close before. Even last week, it was about as close as you can get. They just needed some kicking help, weren't able to do it. As well as, they went for that 2-point conversion, and it just didn't work. I mean, it's just nothing quite clicked, but they're keeping games close. I think they're going to fight hard. This game could be certainly close. I just have the Giants too low enough where they couldn't quite get into that home game advantage tier of where I'd pick the home team, even if they're ranked lower. So for that reason, I'm going with the Eagles, and so is almost everybody. But Matthew has the Giants in this game, and that could shake things up at the top as he is tied with Andrew for first place. So that game alone could make the difference in the final standings. So the next game is in a similar spot, but I'm on the team of this person who is potentially making the bold choice. We have the Seahawks and the Cardinals. And I've been a fan of the Seahawks last few weeks of what they're doing. I think they're playing in the right direction. I, towards the middle of the season, thought they were on the decline, and now they're getting a little bit of momentum. But, the loss against the Steelers last week I don't think helped a ton. And this other team just won a game, and I'm kind of surprised that they're even the underdogs here, but I suppose it's an accurate number. The Cardinals just committed to their quarterback, supposedly. Jonathan Gannon on a podcast was like, yeah, he's our guy. Now, of course, they said the same to Josh Rosen a number of years ago, but overall, I think Kyler Murray with the Cardinals can be dangerous. So I'm going to take the upset here. The team at home, give me the Cardinals over the Seahawks. But almost everyone disagrees with that, except for Alex, who is also on my side going with the Cardinals. So it is just us two. It's 2v8 at the moment, but I'm with Alex on that one. Give me the underdog in the Cardinals there. Rams versus Niners. This one is very tricky because we've got a couple people not playing from both sides. The Rams are currently saying they're going to bench Matthew Stafford for this week. They're going to play Carson Wentz, so we get to see him a little bit in a Rams uniform. But the Niners as well, for sure, Christian McCaffrey is not going to play. Don't want him to get hurt or further hurt in this game, and so this could go either way. I think that now it almost evens out because both teams are going to be benching players, and for that reason, I originally had the Rams if Stafford was playing and McCaffrey and potentially others were not for the 49ers, but because both are now putting benching on the table, I'm going to go with the 49ers, which is in the minority of our guest pickers here. Only have 3 going with the 49ers here, like myself, which is Braden, Matthew, and Danny in this one. But I'm going to go with the 49ers in this one. But the Rams, Carson Wentz could put up a game here, potentially work his way into a position somewhere else next year, maybe. I don't know. Could see what he does there. 2 games left. We have the Chargers and the Chiefs. This one's tricky because the Chiefs are going to be benching players, but I have the Chargers very, very, very low in the power rankings, and so even if you drop the Chiefs a tier, it's not enough for me to pick the Chargers at home. So I know they're playing the backups. The Chiefs have been winning close games or losing very badly, but I think this week, even with the backups, they're not even going to necessarily be trying to win, but I just don't think the Chargers are that great in my opinion. I think they've had some great opportunities over the last few weeks. They kept it close with Buffalo, and I really thought that against Denver last week was the week they could get it done, and if they couldn't get it done against them with their backup quarterback, I'm going to go with the Chiefs in this one, which is in this slight majority of our guest pickers, but very, very split in this one. We have a lot of people considering, that the the Chiefs are benching their players. And so the Chiefs is the underdog pick here, but a majority of us still going with Kansas City. And last game of the week, the hardest game, in my opinion, to select is the Bills and the Dolphins. And I've been talking with a couple of the guest pickers when they were wondering what I was doing for this game after they made their selections. And this is one where, ranking-wise, I have the Bills as a top 5 team right now. They are playing like one of the best teams in football, and they are on fire. But the Dolphins are at home here, and they are dealing with a lot of injuries as well. But even with the injuries, although I have the Bills ranked higher, I don't have them that much higher than the Dolphins, to where even if the Dolphins dropped a tier, they're the home team. So I'm still going to go with the Dolphins. My gut says to go with the Bills, but I've had a lot of games this season where I should have stuck to my formula. And so I'm going to stick to formula here. Go with the Dolphins, who is the underdog and in the slight minority, although this game is about as split as it can get. 1 game advantage to the Bills currently with our guest pickers for this week. So that one should be a very fun game to watch. So that was Week 18 NFL picks, the last pick of this regular season. I will be back with my playoff predictions, but I'll also in that video discuss what the guest picker standings looks like, because we got to get potentially a trophy ready for whoever wins this one, because it is a tight race, and it could even be a tie next week. We don't know how that's going to work yet. So we'll see how these games turn out and what those standings look like. Thank you so much for sticking along with this channel during this season, but don't worry, more content will be coming. It's just going to be different now that the season is over and the picks are done as well. But Riley's Red Zone is going to continue with some videos. So thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.